Hello, hello, my beautiful people. I think we are live. Hello, 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 body, mind, and soul connector. We are here back on our pop-up conversations, weekly conversations with my beautiful co-hosts, Lorna and Michelle. Welcome, my ladies. Hello,
Hello.
everyone. Just say hello to us. Let us know where you're tuning from, and also participate to our conversation. We would love to have you. Today, we talk about setting boundaries in your business, and of course, automatically in your life as well. So let's dive a little bit deep into first of all, what is mean boundaries to you? Because people can have different perspective of what it mean boundary. The first thing that comes to my mind, usually when I think of boundaries is like physical boundaries, but this can be other kind of boundaries as well. So let's dive deep into what boundary means to you and why they're so important, especially into your business as well. Lorna.
Such a great conversation this will be, and a great topic. Coming from an aspect of working in the sexuality aspect of things, boundaries, and we talked about this before we started recording, is boundaries is so much connected to this sense of consent. And as I talk about in my experience and what I teach is that consent, what we call consent, is actually a feeling. And I think that that how it shows up and how we express and how we are in relationships of any kind, whether intimate, family, so and so on the street that we don't even know, and in our business. I think it all really comes back to ourselves. And boundaries themselves, I see it now, and I didn't always look at it this way, but coming from a sense of an inner sense of self in that feeling state, that it really has to do with almost this a sense of not a bubble, but it's more where the energy goes. Like, can I do something and feel it's kind of it's a how to put it into words. But a boundary for me is what marks where consent is or isn't happening. And that sense of, if boundaries are, what are my boundaries? Heck, I don't even, when I grew up, it was a sense of, I didn't, number one, didn't even know the boundary word. Like, that wasn't really a word that was used decades ago. But this experience of it really didn't have a sense because of various things I've been taught. And I think for a lot of us, this idea of do for other people and give, it's better to give than to receive. And so this whole sense of who am I in relation to everybody else, it wasn't even really well established, or wasn't always really honored, whether it was in interactions of any kind of relationship sometimes. And so I think this sense of boundaries can be very elusive, but once it clicks in, it's just it naturally is movable based on what the situation is and what's happening. So for me, I see boundaries as very much a dynamic experience. I'll put it that way.
I love
Interesting.
that. I love that. I love what you said, the fact that to have boundaries, you need to know who you are, you need to know what you want and you don't, because otherwise that's why I think we don't have boundaries, because we don't know where our boundaries end and where other people start. So when it comes to, especially into business, Michelle, you have a lot of experience into this. What it looks like for you and what is mean to have boundaries in your business?
Well, and I don't think you can necessarily separate. I think that the personal side and the business side are interrelated in that way. And the success of a business is all between the ears of its owner anyway. But personal professional boundaries pops to mind. Like, what is it, when you're in a business? What is your personal values and beliefs? And what your service is and who you offer it to. Like, there's all sorts of issues around, like, how personal do you get with your clients? How how much of yourself do you put into your business? when you're working in a team, like in a corporate situation, and you have a senior management team, where are the boundaries between the roles, and what's the difference between a boundary between a role and where they actually work together? Like, if you can, how can you hold the container for a particular role to function, but then also work together without losing that boundary? And how do you respect boundaries? I mean, growing up as someone who grew up with an alcoholic who, essentially you become codependent with them, and you don't, it's sort of like where you are doing for and enabling and propping them up to survive in a sense. Boundaries become very clear, and that can, and if you have those kinds of thinking patterns and you end up not being conscious of them, or not at least acknowledging them, or having containers and boundaries set for yourself around them, that when you turn that, then you turn that trait and you turn into business, you can easily bleed into, doing other roles for other people, and, like overstepping, and, like things that piss other people off when you're trying to work as a team. I know, because I've done it. And so, like, it's really, I love this issue, because it's also, it's not just what, I mean, it is, I think you were totally right, Adriana, like, you have to know your own self and who you are to be able to have some boundaries. And I think you're right, Lorna, in that those change as you change, right? But then there's also like the external driven ones where, other people's sort of perceptions of what should the societal norms should be, sort of like your boundaries meet up against those boundaries in terms of, well, that's not something I'm comfortable with, but yet it's expected, or or it's something what I want to do, but it's not a social norm. So whose boundary takes precedence, right? So there's just all sorts of, that's why I just, as far as business goes, though, I know I'm kind of like swirling around here, but like as far as business goes, though, I think when it comes down to like, my business called The Natural Entrepreneur, and I have to, I like to help people develop businesses that are natural for them, that fit their boundaries and their wishes and their gifts and their purposes and their goals. And so I see the boundaries being drawn differently for different people. And it's really interesting to see, what's acceptable for one person isn't acceptable for another. And so, yeah, and I think that's what makes it, when two people want to do the same thing in terms of business, two people want to do online business together. It's those boundaries that kind of, set the resonance for whether you vibe with one person or another, like whether your boundaries, comfort zones are a match, in part at least, right? So anyway, I don't know if that made any sense, but those are the things that I think of, like, in terms of business and boundaries, because it's just so multifaceted.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's so many avenues to take it up from different point of views to take this idea of setting boundaries. But definitely I will circle it back to understand you, because I have this idea that how you do one thing, how you do everything is how you do everything. So I truly believe that if you don't have boundaries in your own personal life, if you don't have boundaries with yourself, that how much work you put into your business, how much time you give yourself to recover, how much time you set away from the business. So creativity comes in those, quiet moments or reflection moments. I think it's coming back to understanding you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
your business.
yeah, and the piece around setting boundaries is also about safety, emotional safety, right? Because and energetic safety and physical safety, like it's all body, mind, and soul. Because if you don't have those, it's like Lorna's campfire analogy with the rocks and the fire, right? Unless you have those sort of set containers for yourself, it just all sorts of, bleeds all sorts of ways, and you can't ever feel safe, because you never know when there's going to be an intrusion of one crisis or another, right? Or, one demand or another, or, that, you'll end up kind of just running yourself ragged, like you say, self-care wise.
Yeah.
You know what? And I come back to the aspect of when it comes to boundaries, and staying with our topic right now of, say, business, is that, no, life and business, that why do we do what we do or what we don't do? And I think, and again, what I teach, it goes back to from childhood, where that sense of self that we came in with is really quite innate. We're there, but then all of a sudden it gets, what we're doing, all of a sudden we can't do it because, the family needs to do this or that, or I'm expected to do this, and all those places where shame and guilt and somehow being responsible for somebody else are put over us, that oftentimes then it's that sense of this boundary, this doesn't even have a word, it's just this sense of myself. I know where I am in the world, I know what I'm doing. I cry when I'm hungry, and I use words or no words when I want to do something as a child, and little by little words start to happen. But then that sense of wholeness, if you will, starts to get impeded and covered, and then that's where energy, oh, I need to do such and such to please or to be loved, or I need to do this, like you say, for my safety, I need to pull back,
Or
I
to
need
prevent
to,
conflict.
exactly, I have to appease. So those pieces of I think that's where the boundary is just, number one, a sense of our innate sense of self. It's just a natural experience. And then when it's a sense of energy coming at us, or we need to give our energy away, if you will, that I think that's where it no longer is in this sense of an ease of being. And that's where it's then the thoughts start to come, okay, what should I do? And how does this just kind of, there's this whole confusion inside. And I know that, in my business, I say, okay, it's a feeling. Let's go into and reclaim that feeling, so that can be your inner compass. And so when people can, when it comes time for business, like, okay, opportunity to take a client, it's kind of like, money could be great, but this just doesn't feel like a fit. Doesn't feel like I'm gonna have to keep pulling at and trying to. And that's not my job to, keep trying to convince or whatever. And so this idea of, actually, no, it just doesn't feel for me right now. And it's not about that client, maybe another time, but just not right now. So for me, that's where I come back to, and you mentioned that as well, Michelle, that it changes. Like, it could be maybe not right now, maybe the same thing, the same situation a year from now, or something else 3 minutes ago, or I shift and change. And it's kind of like, okay, I just went through a bit of a shift there myself. Now I'm ready to do it, and I'm ready to hold that person into that place of accountability that they're paying me to do. So it's I think that's that piece about where feeling the energy. Do I feel like I'm doing it out of obligation, or do I feel like I'm doing it out of fear, or am I taking it, so I think for, in our community here, we're sensitive to energy. We're aware of that. And to be able to know, does it feel like, this feels just right? And if not, then okay.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to ask if you've ever had anybody gaslight your boundaries after you set them. Like, like if you set a boundary and then someone says, "Oh no, you don't really mean that." Like, you're right. And then if you're somebody who's come from not being, owning your wants, or have been constantly people pleasing, when someone else pokes at them like that, it can really destabilize you. And but I've realized recently that for a number of reasons, including work with Lorna and Adriana, amongst other people, is that, I set a boundary recently, and I realized that didn't even bother me this time. It was just like, no, and or no, I heard you, and then they get mad because their expectations of where your boundary was shifted. And then they throw a little temper tantrum about that. I think that's hilarious now. Sorry, Adriana, I just wanted to put that in there.
No, I love it. I see we have Natalie, Heidi, and Samantha online watching us. We'll love to hear you
Great.
guys. We'll love to hear your guys' thoughts as well about boundaries. For sure will be, how do you set up boundaries in your business? But I want to dive a little bit even deeper when it comes to boundaries. We know when we think of boundaries in business and in life, we think of that these boundaries are associated with the outside world, with the people around us. But let's talk about boundaries with yourself, inner world, with yourself. Because even that will reflect how it reflects over the boundaries in your business, with your clients, with team, and so on.
Yeah, like if you set even goals are a form of boundary, right? Because it's like, there's where I'm shooting for, that's the edge, right? And then if you have a routine, that's kind of a form of boundary, right? And if you're not respecting your own plans, and you're shifting them, is that a form of self-disrespect?
Yeah, I think so, Lorna.
Yeah, and the aspect of out there, well, is there really an out there? Is that really just reflecting back to us what's happening? So if somebody's not respecting me, okay, am I respecting me? So just what you said is allowing that to be a mirror. And again, the thing that so many people have said, and I've said for years as well, like a lot of people, is when you're pointing out to somebody else, there's 3 fingers pointing back, right? And so to be able to allow, I get it. Yeah. Adriana, what about, I would love to know, for you, like in your business, and you talk, working at the family level of things, right? I'd love to hear you share a bit, answering that question you put about going into that inner world.
Yeah, when it comes to like family system, when you look at the internal family system with the parts of you, but also with your family in general, like your parents or your children, wife and husband and so on, and even in your business, so this family system idea, you can incorporate it with your team, with your clients, it comes out to one thing: know your place. That's a set of boundary. Know your place. Because we all have a place in our family system. So say in a family system, you always want to know that your parents are always going to be your parents, and you can never go above them. As much as, we're there to help them or whatever, but know your place. The same in your team. You are the CEO of the company, then be the CEO of a company. Don't try to be everything else. Again, set the boundary of knowing where your line stops and when allow other people to be in their own spot. With your children, you be the parent and allow your children to be the children, and always forming, in your relationship with your partner. If you have a co-business partner as well, know who is doing what. I think that's how I see it when it comes to boundaries: to know your place, know exactly where your place is, and stay in your place. Don't try to take the other person's place or be above or underneath the other person, because that is like the neutral, the harmony in that system, whatever that family business team is going to be disaligned. And when you have disalignment, that everything falls apart, and that's why all the things that are happening in our lives. It's coming back to neutral, coming back to, okay, I know this is my place, this is where I belong, this is what I'm at, and allow other people to belong and create and do who they are to be in their own spot.
So what do you think, Adriana, when people have a hard time saying that they should take up space enough. Like I think of, and I don't know why this struck me, but it's sort of like, even in the culture that you came from in Romania, where you're systematically kind of subjected, and then you go to reclaim that space rather than having been made small. What does it take to be able to claim that new boundary space that's beyond that which you have been taught?
Remove the blockages.
Say again?
Remove the blockages. Because you are the one that hold yourself in a small spot, smaller than you actually are, because of blockages, because of not feeling safe, because of all these things. The same in your business. We tend to overcast our authority or power or control, not because we are above the people or we consider ourselves above the people. It's because back in our childhood, because everything starts in your childhood, all the roots are from there, you realize consciously, if you become conscious of that, but before that you're very unconscious of, like, I give example mine, so I don't talk about other people. When, in my life, when I do other things or when I work with other people, I always unconsciously think like, what happened if they do this and they don't do it this way? And what happened, like my mind just go. And then I start realizing why I'm trying to control them or why I try to control other people. It's not because I don't trust them, because I don't trust me.
Interesting.
Like Lorna said, that it's a reflection, they are a reflection of me. So then I'm like, what is me I don't trust? So it's always coming back to me, like, what is my boundary? Do I need to control? And if I need to control, why is this need coming from? Do I know where is my place? Do I know, coming back what I said earlier, full circle, understanding yourself. More you understand yourself, more you know where your boundaries are, more you can settle them in. This is who I am.
I totally see how that's exactly right. I was just actually talking with someone today about how, like, when you have a CEO and a CFO and a COO and all the different like heads of a company, if they're not all clear on their individual roles and capacities and confidences, and that the CEO isn't functioning, or the CEO isn't functioning as sort of like the vision holder, leader, and director of, like, who's the conductor in the orchestra kind of thing. I kind of actually feel like the CEO is more like the musician who wrote the music, and the COO does the conducting, internally for logistics. And then there's specialists in each area, and there's the people who fix all the instruments and the people who drive like all of that. But it's sort of a fun parallel. But now I've totally squirreled off of what I was going to say. But basically, if you don't have that confidence, it actually turns into conflict.
Yes.
Because you end up sort of like pushing against each other, trying to like establish that role when really it's inside of your own self, and the confidence of what your role is that holds the role there. Like, it's not the role that holds you, you hold the role, sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Heidi, she said, I really noticed I'm really noticing how injuring myself has recently given me an excuse to hold my boundaries. There you go, Heidi.
Yeah,
See,
100%.
even those things, sometimes I see it more and more that the universe is, if you don't take those boundaries, the universe is going to create them for you. So it's up to you to choose. Like, I'm going to do this, or if not, it's going to happen to me either way. And if it's going to happen, then not ask why this is happening to me. Be like, interesting, this happened to me.
And so a crisis will push you to find out where the edges are, right? Yeah. And then you're like, oh, I didn't know I could go that far, right? Yeah. It's like, now that's the boundary I'm going to hold, right? So it can be, some good can come of bad things, and and saying, hey, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that.
Lorna, through your experience, because I know you had to learn to set a lot of boundaries, and from a bit, I know of your story that you start creating boundaries when the boundaries start, you know, when the universe start put boundaries around you because of the situation that were co-created. What would you like to talk about that? How your boundaries were created in the midst of adversity?
You know, I would say that two specific circumstances that were very pivotal for me was when something, and I think back to my former marriage, when something came up, and you know, from a personal thing again, how it shows up um, in a where my husband, you know, said, okay, we're not going to move like I thought I was, like that we would plan to do. And it was just kind of like, what? And it was sort of that, for me, it was sort of that shock moment that it took me out of my head and into my body and said, I need to move now. And so it was not something, oh, what's this mean? It was just kind of like, what? And so I think that sometimes, whether it's an illness or whether it's you know, a tragedy or different things that happen in our lives, it's sometimes those shock moments that take us into, to help us recalibrate, or to all of a sudden we see things differently. So I think that was one of the ways for me. And then I come back into it as well, is again using my former marriage as an opportunity to reflect on this, that and how it shaped me, is when my husband said, you know, your new career, you know, as a somatic sexologist, that doesn't really work for me, you know, and I know that it lights you up. You really seem to found your way. So find out, what do you want to do? You know, do you want to continue that path or stay in the marriage? And for me, I felt into it. And so that's where, when I felt into it, it just became very true what felt alive for me and what was my next step. And so that's where, for me, is when I work with people, is how can we know our boundaries, that it's not a thought process, it's not a thinking thing. So that's why it's come back into your body, and the different steps that I take, like this whole module about finding what does consent is a feeling. So let's let go of the word, and what is that feeling? It now becomes that place that they can become able to, from a feeling state, to know, do I do this or do I not do that? Because what does it feel like? And so I think whether it's in our personal lives, in any way, or in our business lives, it's just really come back. And sometimes the head will say, but, you know, and the body says, no, I know my place. This is where it is. And this is from that place. Then I'm going to take the action from there. And how often then it can be, and you, as it's been said, sometimes it's very much in conflict with how other people are used to us being, you know, so it can ruffle some feathers and cause some, you know, a little turbulence, if you will. But once we know that sense of feeling, then it's kind of like, wow. And when it's been there all along, but sometimes just so covered up that it's like fanning that flame, you know, that ember back into a flame. And to be able to, then that becomes our operating system. That becomes our sense of knowing, that inner compass, to be able to, oh no, it's not this. And then to be able to speak our truth, to live our truth, to take action or non-action from that place. And it seems to me that the more that we do that, that it really is best for everyone, even though it maybe doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
I like that, because for me, sometimes boundaries have slid when I didn't want them to. And I get this sense of like standing on ice, holding onto a rope that someone's pulling me along, and I'm trying to set the boundary and my feet are sliding. And so I'm like sliding along the ice, and then suddenly something shifts where internally I get the traction and my feet grip, and then suddenly the boundary is solid. And that doesn't work for them. And then there's a decision point, you know, that is sort of forced. But that switch in moment from when you're being, you know, pulled along by something, or whether you're holding yourself true, is sort of like the release point for the stress of that conflict and for me. So like if I have finally realized, oh yeah, that's it. I'm not going to do this anymore, for example. And somebody else, well, you used to do that, there's no way that you're not liking that, but when I make that switch, it's sort of like, oh, right. I don't have to worry about what other people think anymore. And so there's a moment of that switch. And I don't know if you guys ever felt any relief. I'd love to hear from the audience too, if they've ever felt any relief when they've set boundaries and there is conflict, because conflict can be stressful, but sometimes when conflict stirs up, I actually feel relief because I know that I've set a boundary for myself.
Yeah, it's like a confirmation of that the action behind the boundary, it's actually happening.
Yeah,
Because
like it needed to be set.
Yeah, because it's very important to boundaries are the first step, but if they're not, like you said, Michelle, if they're not followed by action, because you can say I set a boundary, but if you don't follow it with action, and when the triggers, the exterior triggers are there to prove you, to show you, are you actually keeping this boundary or you just talking about it, that when the change is gonna shift. And maybe the first time it's gonna feel controversial, it's gonna feel like a conflict. But if you set with your boundary and always remember the why behind your boundary, I think that is really important. Remember, why did I decide to have a boundary? Because most of the times you had the past and you have a memory about that, and most of the times it's not a pleasant one, and it's good to remember it.
And particularly for your business, because when you're developing partnerships or you're doing you're trying new things to be able to expand and grow your business. If you're not sort of like centered in that awareness of your own self and needs, you can slide into areas that aren't what your business is, your core services, core values, core directions, core goals, and you can get mission drift with your business, and it takes you off track, and you can be quite circular too. Oh well, I'll do this and then this, and you come running, you're like, oh well, why am I back here again? Or I never got traction on that, never got that done. So yeah, it's interesting.
It can be very pulling you away from what you want. Especially, I love that you mentioned this, especially when you start scaling. When you by yourself and you do everything on the beginning, yes, you have to stretch, you have to wear many hats. But once you scale, and if in your business and in your dream and goals as a business you want to scale, it's important to set those boundaries with yourself, to know that this is what I'm gonna do and what I'm best at, and I'm gonna delegate other things to other people that they're good at that. So it gives me the freedom to continue to work on what I want or and that's a huge thing, because it's that boundary with yourself are coming, like Lorna and you, Michelle, talk about. It's shifting. On the beginning, you have control over all your business, but to scale, you have to let go of the control of all your business, because you have to shift into just a certain position. And that's a huge stretch. So your boundary has to modify its shape in a totally different shape. So that's something interesting.
And what just flashed in as you said that, Adriana, was that idea of that the aspect of healthy boundaries, if you will, or harmonious boundaries. It really moves from this place of what I always used to think of when I thought of boundaries. It was about this defensiveness. And so it moves from defense to dance, that the boundaries, people are dancing together.
Ah, that was beautiful. That was beautiful.
That's a good one.
That was a good mic drop right there, Lorna. Yes, we have a couple of comments from Heidi. She said that was a good thing that her getting hurt was actually an eye-opener for her to see what's possible. So definitely,
cool.
most of the times I see it, rock bottoms in your business, failures, mistakes, bad, let's call it bad, but nothing is bad, co-relationship with other partners, come and go. All these things are it's ways of teaching us our own boundaries and teaching us what we want and don't want in our boundaries as well. So what would be your takeaway or your advice to someone that is struggling currently with boundaries in their own businesses?
I think if somebody's afraid to set boundaries, it has to do with this lack of ownership of self and knowing yourself and want. And I actually got that, you giving yourself permission to have what you want and set those boundaries is something I actually learned from Lorna. And so like knowing where you stop and where the other where your experience stops and where the other person's experience starts. And it's that consent exercise that you did with the hand, Lorna, about, I am experiencing this, the other person may be experiencing something else, and I don't have to worry about that other experience. I only have to worry about my own. And then, and sort of like the flip side of that, and just, but really just owning that it's okay to have your own part of that and to have your own boundaries. Because if you don't explore those and know those and have those, you can't hold boundaries to be able to, hold the role in your company that you need to hold and do exactly what you're saying, Adriana, and scale, especially when you're trying to grow and scale. Like if you can't switch from operator to owner and delegation, then your business won't ever scale. So I guess it's kind of a funny thing to go from a physical and mental boundary into business, but it's all the same thing to me.
Lorna?
I would say it is being responsible, able to respond, responsible to, and not responsible for. So letting each taps into what Michelle said as well, is everybody has their own experience, and as I still be true to myself, I can respond to how they respond, but I'm not responsible for. And so it's the same way when there's different things, different people that they're not responsible for me. They can respond, we can respond to each other, but we're not responsible for each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful. In this, it's take fully responsibility for your own decisions every day is part of your own boundaries with yourself and with your business and so on. Yeah. Great conversations, ladies. Thank you so much. For everyone that are watching, thank you, Heidi, for all your beautiful comments, and for everybody else watching, we'll love to continue to hear your thoughts when it comes to setting your boundaries in your business and your life. Also, we'll love to hear from you. What are you tuning from, and what is your biggest struggle with boundaries, for sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you watch this on replay, comment below, say hello, let us know your thoughts. And also, we'll love to invite you in November 3rd. That's correct, Michelle? I think November.
I'm going to double check, but I think that's right.
It is.
Yeah, I think November 3rd.
Time is just going so fast.
Yes, it's already November.
It is November 3rd at 10 a.m. is our next connection circle. And if you've been on a connection circle, make sure that you take the opportunity to have a one-on-one interview with Adriana or Lorna and I to promote your business and talk about what you do. We love having you here, and we're really grateful for you to be in this space sharing your gifts.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next Sunday, or we'll see you next Tuesday at the pop-up conversation. Until then, take care of you and set your boundaries. Bye-bye.